Hello, everyone, and welcome to Birdview's weekly workshop. I'm excited to have you all join today. Our weekly workshops take place every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern and 10 a.m. Pacific. So we cover a different topic each week, and you can register for our weekly workshops through our website under the events tab, or you can simply click on the link that's displayed on the screen right now. You always have the option to register for several at one time, and you don't have to jump in every week and register uh, for them individually. So I encourage you to join as many of these as possible to learn tips and tricks on how to make the most of Birdview for your work. With each session, we start with a demo on the topic that we're covering, and then we'll then have the last 10 minutes to go over any questions that you may all have. So please feel free to send in your questions in the chat or simply raise your hand virtually, and we will get to them when we're done with the demo. All right, our topic this week is customize your project workflows. So we'll start with understanding what a workflow is, why is it used, and how it can accommodate different projects, different portfolios, as well as several different departments within the same company. We'll also learn how to create workflows within Birdview and how to apply it to projects. We'll see how we can view projects with different workflows in the Kanban view within the Activity Center. And finally, we'll go over some best practices to leverage workflows efficiently and to avoid any errors when you are working along with them. All right, so I'm going to share my demo account. All right, so what is a workflow? It's generally defined as a system for managing repetitive processes and tasks which occur in a particular order. A project workflow does precisely that with the help of tagging each task with a status, so we can identify where in the process the task is to help you better organize your work. A typical project workflow will include statuses like open, in progress, on hold, and closed. Uh, Workflows can also be customized to accommodate either an industry or a department. So, for example, a construction company can have a workflow with statuses like design, pre-construction, procurement, building, commissioning, and owner occupancy. And a marketing department's workflow, on the other hand, will have statuses like ideation, design, review, approval, and feedback. All right, so let's start with how to create workflows within Birdview. A workflow creation is actually a setting in the system. Sorry, it's a permission in the system. So let's say if you are a project manager, you probably will have the ability to create workflows and edit them. But you can also restrict team members from having access to workflows so that they don't create their own or change anything that's existing. So I'm just going to jump to company settings to show you where in the system you can actually see the permission. So let's pick on the project manager option right here. You can see manage workflows that's already been enabled. So it's as easy as clicking that check sign or not. If you are an admin in the system, this is the easiest way to go ahead and do that, and then you hit save. Now, I am an admin in my system, so I already have access to workflows. So as you can see right here, the workflows tab is available to me to view. I do have a couple of workflows in there, but I also have the ability to create a new workflow. And you can see this default sign right here. What this means is that when someone creates a project in the system, it's automatically going to add this default workflow to that project, unless they go ahead and make a change to the workflow itself. You can decide which workflow has that default status. So for example, if let's say I want to change it to marketing, I can simply click on these three dots right here and I can mark it as default. All right. When I do that, whenever someone adds a new project to the system, that project is going to have the default workflow already assigned. So I'm just going to click on this workflow right here to show you what it looks like in the system. So this workflow is currently in use within 6 projects. It is our default workflow. I do have the ability up here to duplicate it. So if I want to duplicate these steps and then make changes to it, rename it, I have the ability to do that. Typically, you will also have the ability to delete a workflow or mark it as default. In this case, those 2 options are not showing up because this is already a default workflow and it's in use within 6 projects, which means that you won't be able to delete this workflow without going into those projects and changing what that workflow looks like. That's the reason why you'll only have one duplicate option over here. If I click on the marketing workflow and click on those 3 dots, I'm going to have a duplicate option mark as default. Again, it's in use within 3 projects, so I'm not going to be able to delete it. All right, so jumping back into the default workflow, you can go ahead and delete any of the statuses within a workflow if you like, but you won't be able to delete the entire workflow if it's in use. You can also move these around. So within the activity center within a project, if I want to see open, in progress, closed, and then hold, I would simply change this up, pull closed, oops. Pull the hold button down, pull the close button up, and it's going to appear in this order within the system. You also have the option to decide how these statuses are treated within the project. So for example, if I click on this treat as open right here, under the open status, I'm able to set in the system whether it's going to be treated as open when that project or task is in this status. I can also treat it as hold, or I can treat it as completed. So as you can see here, open is treated as open, in progress is treated as open. If the project is closed, it is treated as completed. And when it's on hold, it's treated as on hold. You can also assign colors to these. So you're seeing some colors that have already been assigned, but in order to change it, I can simply click on the color and I can decide which color I would like to use. Now, on the right-hand side here, you have 4 options. You have project, and then you have 3 activity types: the task, the issue, and the request. And you have these checkboxes right here. So what these checkboxes mean is that you are allowing the system to capture these statuses within these different options as well. So within a task, you will have all these statuses. Within an issue and a request as well, you will have all these statuses. If you decide that at an issue level, you do not want to put any issues on hold, you can always remove that status for the issue part of it, or you can remove it for the request part. All right, so you can easily make those changes. And then the last part when you create a workflow is the task, these little sheet pages right here, these little icons that you see here. When I hover over this one, it says that this is a new project default status. So what these mean is that you can either set up a default status for when something is created new. If I click on, let's say, hold, and I click on that right there, I can decide whether the new project default status is going to apply to that hold status or to the completed status. So when a project is in hold, we're going to have that as the default status. All right, I can always add new statuses as well, but let's jump to creating a new workflow from scratch. All right, so let's call this the construction workflow. It's not in use, all right, because I haven't added it to any projects as yet. So I can very easily go ahead and delete it if I want to duplicate it, or mark it as default. Now we already have 2 statuses in here. Let's add a few more. Let's say in design is 1. Let's go ahead and add some colors right here as well. So if it's open, it is yellow. If it's closed, it is blue. If it's in design, let's say it is light green. Let's say if it's in the building phase, it's dark green. And then we'll add a hold option in here as well. And we'll treat that as okay. All right, now these are automatically setting up, but I can make changes to them if I need to. In this case, I don't really want to make changes to the treat as, but I do want to change the order. So I'm going to pull closed down to the bottom so that it now flows through the order that I want it to appear in the activity set. The closed option is already set as the default option here, so I'm not going to make any changes to this as well. So this is what my construction workflow is going to look like. It has already been created and saved. So I'm going to jump out of it, and now I have a construction workflow right here as well. All right. So let's move on to assigning a workflow to a project within the system. All right. So in the activity center, I'm going to pick the workflow demo. I'll just use the filter here to make it easier. Workflow demo is the project that I have in the system. I have a few tasks in there. And right now, if I click it, as you can see, there are some statuses in here as well. If I click on details, my collaboration center opens up, and up here, the first option is for me to select that workflow. So we have the default workflow in here. What I'm going to do is change it to the construction workflow. Before I do that, I'm just going to click on one of the statuses right here within this task. You're able to see these 4 options in the different colors based on the default workflow. But when I go ahead and change that workflow to the construction workflow, those statuses are going to change automatically. So now I have the option to select the statuses within that workflow. So let's say make some changes here. I've selected all of my statuses, and it's clearly showing me, indicating the colors as well in terms of where we are at. So it's really easy to go ahead and set up a workflow within a project. Keep in mind that you can only set up a workflow at the project level, although the statuses do apply to the activities within that project. A workflow cannot be different within the activity and within the project. It has to be the same workflow. All right, so now let's move on to viewing workflows within the Kanban view. So if I jump on over to the Kanban view, you do have statuses, which we call swim lanes. And this is kind of indicating where your tasks are at within certain projects. Now I can filter through the workflow, sorry, the workflow that's in the system. So right now I have the default workflow up, but if I jump to the construction workflow, it's automatically going to pull in my tasks and put them in the statuses that they are in the system. All right, so it's very easy for me to kind of take a look at a specific project. Right now we're filtering also through the workflow demo project, so I can see where all of my activities are at within that project. I can go ahead and move things over. So let's say stage 4 is now in the building phase. I can move it over to the building phase. And stage 2 is out of close and is now in the building phase as well. I can move it. You simply click and drag and pull them into the different stages. Whatever you do here reflects in the waterfall view and vice versa. So if I jump back to the waterfall view, you will see those changes appear here as well. All right, so that is how you can go ahead and create workflows, add them to projects, and also view them within the Kanban view. I do want to move on to show you some best practices within the system. So the first thing is that you can actually go ahead and filter through your projects using these workflow options as well. So I have a view of all of my projects here in the system. I don't have any filters on at the moment, but if I would like to see projects within certain workflows, I simply click on project status. I have my workflows right here. So it splits it up into the different workflows. And then I can see within the default workflow, I want to see all of my projects and tasks that are in the open stage. So I can click on that. It's automatically going to display that. Or I can say the construction workflow. I want to see all of my tasks that are within the building phase. And it's going to, oh, I'm sorry, these are projects. So all of my projects in the building phase right now, I don't have any, so it's not going to appear. But if I look at activity status under construction workflow, and I look at all of my activities that are within the building phase, it's going to show me that project. And when I expand further, it's going to show me those two tasks, those two activities that are within the building phase. So you can filter through your projects and tasks using workflows in the system. The other thing that you can do is you can always create your templates with an existing workflow as well. So for example, I'm going to filter out and look for my template, which is project ABC. When I change the workflow here, let's say I change it to construction workflow, and if I use this template in the future to create a project, it's automatically going to add the construction workflow to it. So I don't have to manually change it or keep editing it every time I create this project, this template as a new project. So you can always do that in the system as well in advance. The third thing you can do is also use the custom forms. So that when a custom form comes into the system as a new project, you already have a workflow in place. So for example, I have a custom form here that says new project request. This is used when an external team member or even an internal team member needs to send in a new project to be created within the system. So if I want to set up a workflow for that, I can simply edit the form under conversion rules. Under project, I have the option to indicate which workflow this needs to be added for. All right, so let's say I select the construction workflow. Whenever a project comes in, it's going to come in, get created as a new project, and it's automatically going to have that construction workflow. So you can set it up based on that as well. All right, the last thing and one of the most important things to keep in mind is that the default workflow not only works at a company-wide level, but it also works at an individual user level as well. So let's say the company-wide default is the default workflow, but I am a member of the marketing team. And so when I create a new project, I would like to have my default workflow be the marketing workflow. I can do that as long as I have the permission to in the system. And the way to do that is to jump into company setting, my settings in the system, jump to advanced settings, and I have the option to go ahead and change my default workflow right here itself. So I can then select marketing as my default workflow, in which case, whenever I create a new project, it's going to automatically have the marketing workflow enabled within that project. All right. So those are some of the best practices to follow when you use workflows. Some of them are not only best practices, but they also help you save time and benefit from using workflows in the right places, so the right departments, the right teams, etc. Our next workshop will be on the 25th of April. So we will be going over custom fields, how to create them and use them within several different areas in the system. The month of May is dedicated to resource loading. So it's Birdview's resource loading month. And we start off the first week with our workshop on the basics of resource management part one. There's a lot more to come on resource management through the month of May. So once again, you can register for these workshops on the website under the events tab, or use the link that's displayed on the screen right now. Thank you once again for joining. I do hope that this session was helpful for you. The success email is on the screen right now. As I mentioned, if you have any questions from today's session, you can always send over an email and we will respond. And your suggestions are also always very welcome. So please, if you have any recommendations for topics that you would like us to cover in the future, do send in those responses to this email as well.